Welcome to Crafty Hints. I'm Chantel. Thank you so much for visiting me. We're going to do a little vintage farmhouse today. DIY1. I started out with this long scarecrow sign from the Dollar Tree. And a little bit of, I believe that's silver lining that I was using. And I'm just going to cover the board. I do apologize. I had a dental procedure done, and so my speech is off just a little bit. I apologize. So just make sure to get that covered and let it completely dry. Next, I use the stencil that I made on my Cricut. I just folded it there to find the center and centered that on the board, making sure there's no bubbles. This is special stencil vinyl, so it's removable vinyl. And it works well. Next, I'm going to cover this with plaster, chalk paint, and I'm just using a dauber, using a daubing motion, so it helps seal down that stencil. So this is some reverse stenciling. And I'm just going to cover the whole thing and let it dry just about before I put my coat all over the top. And you do want to be a little bit careful, making sure you're not going against the stencil, kind of going with it and checking where it's, sealed in, just going in a straight motion there, but covering that nicely. I let this just about dry before I do this. Otherwise, if it's too wet, when you pull this up, the little bits that come off can fall back on there and adhere to it. So you don't want that. But this part's a little bit therapeutic. So when you pull this off, it kind of looks like the gathered was hand painted on there. And you want to be careful. You can use a needle or whatever works for you to kind of get an edge on this. And I just kind of blow getting those little paint bits off, because if you brush them, they might adhere to that gray paint. So just continuing to pull this off. And I really do hope that this inspires you to make some sort of sign like this for yourself. Now I'll just speed this up a little bit, but it is kind of neat to see it being pulled off there. Sometimes it'll come off in just one big piece. And there it is. Kind of nice. Now I just want to put a border around it. So I bought this trim at the Home Depot. Goodness, it was probably a year ago. This has been sitting in my garage, and it was like $1, but you know how wood prices are right now. So maybe it's $1.50, $2. I don't know. It's coming back down, but I had plenty to go around the board, and I just cut that at a 40-degree angle. Now I just took some water with some Waverly ink paint to make a little bit of a dark stain. I just brushed that on and wiped it off. To cut those boards, you can definitely use a little miter box saw. I do have a miter saw that I used in my garage. Now I'm just going to use a little bit of wood glue to attach these. I went to my staple gun and it was out of staples. So normally I would glue this to get it to adhere together, and then I would flip it over and put a staple or two in the back. So if you have one, that would be a much better choice. Once these were completely dry after I clamped them, I did go back once it was dry and just put a little bit of hot glue across each of the seams. Now I just took my sanding block over the top just to get that a little bit smoother. Now I'm going to line this up on the back of this frame. And because I don't have my brad nails for my staple gun or the staples, I ended up using my trusty glue gun. I mostly just did that on the corners and then just lifted slightly to get underneath and then just went across that hot glue and ran it up the side. It really adhered well. Oh, isn't that pretty? I think that'll go great above my sofa. I think it turned out pretty. Now, a couple of my friends are also doing some vintage farmhouse, so I'll link them down below. DIY2. Now, you may have seen that milk jug there. I got this from the Dollar Tree, and now I'm just going to use some of the 3D fabric paint that you may have seen me use in the past. First, I put some tape, and I just want to make sure that's straight so that I'm just using this as a guide so that when I put my wording on there, it'll be straighter than if I didn't. You want to make sure and give this several taps so that there isn't any bubbles. And now I'm just going to write the word milk because this does look like the old milk jugs. And this isn't too tough to use as long as, you can trust your handwriting there. I would suggest trying it once or twice, maybe on a piece of paper, because you definitely get better control as you go along. My M is definitely a little bit thicker than the other letters. But I think it went well. So I just tipped that down on my tape and was going to let it dry. And then I thought, oh, I want to put a number on there. So I used one of these felt numbers. My suggestion, probably give this a coat or two of paint first to try and get rid of some of that red to tone it down. I thought the chalk paint would go over it a little bit better than it did. I had to kind of go back with a detail brush and just go over it once or twice just on its own, which I didn't show because that would be kind of boring for you. So I'm just going to go over this. Again, I don't want it to be perfect. I want this to look old and vintage and like I found this back in the garage from, 30, 50 years ago. Who knows? So I did go over and kind of tap it, and I go lightly over the milk, but I did make sure that the milk was completely dry. But it kind of gives it that effect of the raised glass. So I think it's kind of a neat effect. I did, after I put this whole coat on there, I kind of went back over it as I was touching it up, and it kind of makes it a little bit more distressed looking. And here it is. I do hope that if you're enjoying this video that you'll hit the like and subscribe and leave a comment below on which was your favorite or what you're inspired to work on your next craft. DIY3. This is the last one. And I wanted this one to be kind of versatile so that I could move from summertime to fall. Now, if you did see there, I had just painted the milk jug. It's actually right there drying. If you put plastic over your paint And I'm just recycling. That is plastic off of another package that I had just DIY'd a couple days ago. But if you put that plastic over the top of it, it's going to protect it from the air and keep it moist. Now I just used a little bit of territorial beige. It kind of has a terracotta look to it. I did add a little bit of that plaster chalk paint color to it. Just to make this look a little bit more distressed. Kind of like, oh, it was painted white, but it's been outside for years and, you know, a little vintage. So here's a little bit of mineral. I like mineral for the distressed. So I'll just kind of put that in a few spots, and using a baby wipe really helps to add some of that effect to it. And just went down inside just a little bit for the parts that you might see. Now a little bit of floral foam. And these Dollar Tree flowers. I thought that they were kind of summery, but with the yellow, they go with the pumpkins. Maybe they go with a little bit of sunflowers. But I just wanted them to be versatile so that they could change to the next season. So you just want to snip those off so that you can arrange them in a fashion in this vase any way you want. You could definitely glue that floral foam down also, but it really didn't move too much for me, so I didn't have an issue. And make sure you kind of bend the flowers to how you want them to look. Flowers, when they come on the stem, they're just so straight. So make sure to fluff them, and the leaves that you might put in there also. Arrange them out so that they fit where you want them to fit. And they're just not so stiff and in place. You know, pulling on those little branches and separating them, etc. And the nice thing is nothing's been glued, so I can move it around, and I continue to use this flower pot, you know, for many different seasons to come. Now, I'm using that hula skirt that I used before from the Dollar Tree. It's the skirt that just keeps on giving. Now, I couldn't find my Spanish moss. I might be out, but it reminded me of some other filling that I had. So I thought this would be a quick one to put in here, and it will also switch over to fall. You can't really see it, but I wanted to cover that floral foam. So you can just tuck this in around that foam, and then on top of it, if you wanted to glue it, you definitely could. And I'm just going to go around in a circle until I use all of this raffia, hula skirt, whatever you want to call it. Pretty easy. Oh, I think the other's called Excelsior. I think that's what the other filler's called. I will show it to you in a minute because I do have some. Yep, there it was. That was the Excelsior. So it looks similar. Now I'm just going to take a bit of jute twine and attach it to the back. And, oh, I think I need a dot more glue. And just wrap this around, and then I really only need to glue at the end. And I'm just stacking this right on top of the strand before. Just keeps going round and round. Just gives it a little bit more of a finished area. And a tiny bit of glue down on there so that it grabs those two pieces together and grabs to the terracotta pot. And that's all there is to it. How cute is that? So simple, I know, but I wanted to remind you that you can make things simple and sweet and keep making it versatile and reuse it. I do hope that you've enjoyed these. And here's my sweet friends again. I'll put a list of all of our videos together in a link below. Here's one more look at what we made today. Thank you so very much for joining me.